So we have Pat Binns here, not only former Premier of PEI, but a one-time MP for Cardigan from 1984 to 1988. Pat, just tell me about your term as Cardigan MP and what it was like to serve in that role.
Well, it was quite an experience. I was there during the Brian Mulroney years, and he was quite popular at the time, at least when we started out. So I think he helped to pull a lot of us into his caucus from across the country, and it seemed we did well right across Canada, PEI included, after PEI being generally electing Liberals most of the time, although Angus MacLean and Heath McQuarrie had federal seats for quite a number of years, but we had more years when the Liberals were elected and part of government in Ottawa.
Right. I happened to dig up a clip of you from the House of Commons in 1986, and you were saying how PEI was paying 55 cents for diesel and New Brunswick was only paying 36. Other than that, what were the biggest issues of the day back then?
Well, I think primary industries are always important to PEI. So, agriculture, fisheries, tourism, lesser degree, forestry were important. And it's kind of a juggling act with all those. I guess, we were looking for ways and means to enhance our economy, build it stronger. Generally, our population was not growing. Economic challenges were big, as primary industries were great, but they weren't producing the kind of income we needed in the long term to necessarily keep our economy going.
Right.
They would with other things, more manufacturing and processing and technology. We could see those being important. The whole area of bioscience and so on was coming on. Education as an industry was important. So it was a time of change. I think continued to have to look for new opportunities and new ways of doing things.
Right. And then, so Lawrence MacAulay beat you in 1988. Why do you think he had such longevity in the job?
Well, that was an interesting election in 1988. Of course, it was the free trade election.
Yeah.
Brian Mulroney was very big on free trade. He was closely connected because of industry in Quebec and his background. So he was a promoter of free trade with the U.S. and generally the country was on side. Atlantic Canada was a little bit different. We certainly found that out in 1988 because generally people voted against free trade. And so what I found different from that election, about that election to other elections, was that it was not about the candidate hardly at all. It was about the issue of free trade.
Right.
And so in 1988, free trade was popular in central Canada. Maybe it was promoted better. For whatever reasons, we didn't counteract the negatives well in Atlantic Canada. And so we lost just about every seat in Atlantic Canada, we being the Conservative Party. And that was, coinciding with the arrival of Lawrence, who was my opposition, well-liked, community guy, had good political contacts, even his brother in the Premier's office didn't hurt. A lot of things working in his favor. He was well-known, good guy, and the Liberals were back in.
And so, how different was it going from being, one MP out of hundreds across the country to then, 8 years later becoming Premier of PEI?
Well, after the 88 election, when I was defeated, the Mulroney government was still in office and would be for another term or so, because they'd done well in central Canada, but not Atlantic Canada.
Yeah.
And so I went into private business. So I had my farm, did some farming, did some consulting work. So it was quite a lifestyle change for me. But I had enjoyed the political experience, both as a minister previously in the Angus MacLean government, and being an MP in Ottawa, and felt there was still a need there. I wasn't necessarily thinking about that a lot, but the opportunity came along. People asked me if I would consider running for leadership, which I did, and that became history. Elected in 1996, I think through to 2007.
And so what are your thoughts on this race here in Cardigan with James Aylward against Kent MacDonald?
Well, I think there are quite likely similarities to that 1988 election in that one issue is dominating how people are thinking about the election. And I think they're looking at, okay, this is a pretty big challenge for Canada, a big challenge for PEI. Who can best lead us through this situation, dealing with the United States, tariffs, and that whole relationship, which we're very dependent upon. It's going to be a challenge, I think, no matter who gets there, and I think the question on people's minds, okay, who's best to do this? On one hand, people are saying, well, the Liberals have had a lot of years in office, time for a change. Our debt load has increased. Our economy is not growing as fast as some others. Many challenges, but the arrival of Mark Carney brings a new perspective, and so people are obviously dealing with, okay, do I want Pierre Poilievre or Mark Carney? And I think the big issue is really comes down to leadership and people's perception of who can handle the challenges going forward best. And so PEI votes, I think, for the most part, will be based very much on the selection or idea of who can do this job the best, who's got the best experience, who understands the needs of people. And it'll be interesting to see how it comes out. I think that the election had been held a year ago. I think there's no doubt that the Conservative Party would win the 4 seats in PEI. The dynamics have changed because of President Trump and the arrival of Mark Carney on the scene. The polls have certainly shifted. How strongly, I think we won't know till Monday night.
And so, other than tariffs and Canadian sovereignty, are there any other major issues for you personally in this election?
Well, I think that's really the big one. There are obviously always local issues. The ferry continues to be an issue in this area. People want to be assured that not only is a new ferry, but the service continues and at affordable prices. Obviously, our primary industries are of a concern. We have to export our agricultural products, our fishery products. So we have to compete in the marketplace. Who's going to give us the best opportunity to do that? And then there's the other more local things, like who's going to make sure we have enough money for health care and enough money to buy groceries. So there's many issues out there, but I think still dominated by leadership at the national level, and I think more votes will be cast for the national leaders as opposed to people deciding just on the local candidates.